Welcome to our devotion. We are working through Luke chapter 6, and we are working through Jesus' words in this new community he's creating, and we are inviting God to transform us more into God's family that brings people together from every nation, every tribe, and breaks down the walls of division and barriers around us as God creates something new and loving and good and just. And so I want to invite you to spend some time in prayer as you prepare your heart and your eyes and your ears for whatever God might be saying to you today.
It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul.
Our scripture reading today comes from Luke chapter 6, verses 37 and 38. If you were with us yesterday in our devotion, we read these verses yesterday as well. And yesterday we focused on God inviting us to stop the cycle of judgment and to not judge one another. And today we're going to read the rest of that section there that talks about giving. And so I'm going to read the context in which Jesus says these words today as you prepare yourself to listen and experience these words from Jesus. Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And he looked up at his disciples and he said, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back." The word of the Lord. This text today continues what we saw yesterday about this kind of reciprocal nature that Jesus is talking about. That the way that you treat people, the way that you interact in the world, you invite back on yourself. And so the very first idea that Jesus gives us is about forgiveness. And I want to think about that in relationship to yesterday, in which we talked about not judging one another, not condemning and pronouncing kind of your sentence on other people. And I think going out from that into this forgiveness language invites us to still think in that same sphere. And I really like how the New American Standard Bible translate that forgiveness word there as pardon. The way that you pardon someone is the way that you will be pardoned back. The way that you forgive someone is the way that you will be forgiven back. We are not being naive in this forgiveness and this pardoning act. We are aware that sometimes people have hurt us, that they've harmed us, they've disrespected us, they've treated us badly, that they are guilty of those things. We can be accurate and certain of that judgment. But we are called to forgiveness, and that when we can forgive and say, yes, you were wrong, but yet I am not going to hold that against you. I'm going to move forward in a new way with you, in a new way forward in our relationship. As you offer forgiveness, you also invite others to see you and see the times that you have failed, that you have fallen short, that you have hurt, and to offer forgiveness back to you. Because one-sided forgiveness in which everybody causes problems, everybody messes up, everybody hurts someone, but if only some forgive, we're still stuck in a messy world. And so it's only in a society, in a community that God creates that can imagine a place in which forgiveness is kind of extravagantly just given out and distributed, that we begin to be able to move past the cycles of violence and frustration and retaliation. And so Jesus invites you to forgive, and it will be forgiven of you. And Jesus goes on to say, give, and it will be given to you. And so it's not just in this language of kind of letting go or of judgment, but just generosity as the image moves more in that sphere of giving things to one another. And this gets kind of this imagery in this text that I think is really meaningful, and it really stands out to me as I was reading through Luke chapter 6. What does it mean to give and it will be given to you? Jesus says, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. When you have measuring cups out and you're trying to like fill flour, sugar, you're trying to fill that measuring cup up with something. Certain materials you can kind of like shake it down, and it settles down into the container, and then you can pour a little bit more in, and so you just keep trying to just fill it to the brim, and when it is filled to the brim, it's just going to start overflowing. And you can imagine if you're carrying a container, they had this imagery about the belts that they would wear and their cloaks and how it would kind of make this pocket. So you're trying to carry this container that's filled to the brim, and it's pouring out over, and it's falling into your lap, and it's getting into your kind of pocket there. And so your generosity, as you try to fill something to the brim to give someone a good, fair measurement, instead of trying to kind of, hide that you're not giving them as much as you could. But when you do that, the generosity of it just overflows and just spreads. And I'm sure you can think about the types of product packaging where you feel like it's filled and sometimes you don't. Kind of the one that we always jump to as knowing that it doesn't feel like it's filled is, your potato chip bags, where you kind of have that disappointment when you open it up and you're like, I know that there's always less than I expect, and yet it still hits you that way, that like, I wish this was filled a little bit more. But then there are certain other containers that it's just kind of, it's hard to open it without it overflowing. And those who know me, know that I love sweet tea, and I've got these sweet tea bottles that I drink from a lot, and I always have to be super careful because as you open it, they just fill it to the very top, and it feels like it's always spilling, and it's always a risk on getting on your shirt or getting on the floor or your table or whatever. But there's a joy that comes from knowing, they gave me as much as they could give me, and think about in your life when you give to people, are you trying to just kind of meet the requirement limit, or are you trying to exceed expectations and give more? And I think about, companies who've tried to like enact that as a practice of now we kind of are used to it and expect it. But there's a company that does like sound equipment and stuff that's called Sweetwater, and they would always include candy in their boxes of what they ship to people. And it's meant to be like that little treat of, I expected this and I even got more. Our family goes to Olive Garden. Our daughter, Gwen, loves getting those mints at the end of the meal, and like, what is that extra filling, that measurement that just overflows, that you get more than you expect? There's the generosity there. And what is it for that to be the way that we live in our life, that the people that we interact with, that when we give to them, we just want to overflow with giving even more than they expect. If somebody asks you for something and you bring that, are you bringing even more with you? And so today, I just want to invite you to think about your generosity in your life. Think about how open and how willing and how kind of generous you've been with the people that you have interacted with in life. And so what I just want to charge you with today is to spend time in prayer and ask God about who God would like you to be generous with today. And so perhaps you could just, if you've got a journal and you got a notebook and you want to write down a few names, but who are the three people in your life right now that you want to just be abundantly generous with, that you just want to give and give more than they would expect, and show your love and God's love for that person. And there's a hope in that kind of act in the world, it's not meant to be a selfish act of just what you can get back, but that you create a world with God that is the way that people treat each other, that we are going to give extravagantly to support one another, that we're going to forgive extravagantly, we're going to love even our enemies. And so you can participate in that way of life today, just through simple acts of generosity. Who and what is God calling you to support and to give to today? As you think about that, hear again the words from Jesus in Luke chapter 6. Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And Jesus looked up at his disciples and said, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back." May you give love and forgiveness and generosity out into the world today, and may you receive it in kind back. Have a wonderful, blessed day.
It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well.